for joining us for our virtual town hall on the bipartisan infrastructure deal. I have the honor of serving the people of Georgia's 5th Congressional District as Congresswoman Nikema Williams, Communications Director. We're going to get started in just a moment. Thank you for staying tuned and tuning in with us. If you have any questions at all, please enter them into the chat and we will try to address all of them. Now, before we get started, just want to thank everyone for joining us. And without further ado, I will turn it over to my friend and our Congresswoman, Congresswoman Nikema Williams.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. It is a conversation that we all need to be having, talking about the important work that we're doing to build back better for the American people. And y'all, that includes so much that we are doing for you right here in Georgia's 5th Congressional District. Just last week, we passed the transformational Build Back Better Act for a never before seen human infrastructure for people and families. And then the week before that, we delivered the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the BIF, the BIB. Regardless of what you call it, what I need you to know is that the impact is the same. $13.6 billion for Georgia mass transit, highways, water infrastructure, airports, and highways. Y'all, this bill is the single largest investment in mass transit, a huge step forward for transportation equity to ensure that all communities have safe access to work, school, and the places in our community that we all deserve to enjoy. It also invests in universal high-speed internet. And I know that we've all recognized that during the pandemic, we saw just how essential it is to have reliable internet access. But for far too long, it's been out of reach for many. And y'all, this isn't just rural Georgians. We have pockets of Metro Atlanta that cannot get reliable, high-speed internet during this pandemic. It also brings an investment of $1 billion for reconnecting neighborhoods divided by interstate projects like the 1956 Federal Highway Act. The Downtown Connector and I-20 divided Black neighborhoods and decimated Black wealth in Atlanta. This is a matter of racial and economic justice that I've championed. And y'all, $1 billion is just the start. I'm committed to fighting for so much more, but I could not be more proud to have authored this legislation to have it included in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So, what does all of this mean for Georgia's 5th Congressional District? Well, this morning, you're in for a treat because you get to find out from the experts. I'm joined by Doug Hooker, the Executive Director of the Atlanta Regional Commission, and Mike Alexander, Senior Director of the Center for Livable Communities, for a quick conversation to really break down what this all means for the people and communities in our region. Remember, if you have questions, just drop them in the comments and we'll address them shortly. So to start, I'm going to turn the conversation over to Doug Hooker to kick us off with a snapshot of what this investment means for your work. Mr. Hooker?
Thank you, Congresswoman Williams. This is just monumental for all of us at ARC and for the Atlanta region. I want to thank you and all the members of Congress who sought to support the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And we also appreciate the partnership that your office has had with ARC since the time you took office. This act will provide historic levels of funding for our transit infrastructure, our road investment infrastructure, and as you also mentioned, things to help our water systems as well, and to help with broadband and climate change. Over the past decade, most people don't realize that Atlanta has grown fourth most in the nation, only behind 3 other regions in the nation. And by 2050, we expect that we will add 2 million more people to the Atlanta region. And in order to manage this growth, we certainly have to continue to invest in the maintenance and the expansion of our infrastructure, most particularly our transportation infrastructure. There are several aspects of this, so many great aspects of this bill, but 3 things that I'll point out very quickly. As you pointed out, the Reconnecting Neighborhoods program is critically important. This is certainly something that you have championed. I-20 bisected neighborhoods on the west side and the east side, historic Black neighborhoods, and the connector 75 and 85 downtown and through the southern portions of the region certainly broke apart historic neighborhoods like Summerhill, Mechanicsville, and others. And through the Reconnecting Neighborhoods program, we will be able to examine and plan for ways to reconnect neighborhoods that have received so much disinvestment since that time of being dissected. We're looking also at the program for climate change. For the first time, a transportation bill will encourage federal transportation planning agencies, or regional transportation planning agencies like the ARC, to plan for and make for changes in our air quality that will address climate change and also resilience in our infrastructure. This will allow us to expand transit services, but also look for other ways to reduce trips and also to prepare for the electrification of the U.S. fleet. We know more cars and more car manufacturers are planning to change their fleets over to electric vehicles. And we will need a lot of public charging infrastructure in order to make that possible and convenient for drivers. So there's so much about this. And then one other thing that I'll mention that's critically important from our perspective, we know that housing affordability is rapidly a challenge in this region. We have been for a long time a relatively affordable place, but we're rapidly losing that. And now the federal policy in this bill explicitly requires us as a transportation planning agency to also consider in and factor in housing and housing affordability considerations as a part of any new or augmented transportation. And that's something we have been wanting for a long time, the tool plus the money to be able to do that. So I think I'll just close with that. There's so many great things in this bill that are going to really help Georgians and Metro Atlantans, and certainly the residents of the 5th Congressional District.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hooker. And I think that just shows why it was so important that we get this bill across the finish line, because Georgians, Atlantans, the Metro Atlanta region are counting on us to get this done. And so I know that I make sure that when I go to work in Congress, I'm here to deliver for the people that sent me there to serve. So I am grateful for your partnership and helping us explain exactly what's in store for us this morning. Next, we're going to have Mike Alexander, the Senior Director of the Center for Livable Communities. Mike, can you talk to us about the investments in physical infrastructure that make our communities more livable? You're muted, Mike. There we go.
Sorry about that. I apologize. Good morning again, Congresswoman. I can't say how happy we are to be discussing this really monumental bill for us. And when we think about the way we've been working in communities as a metropolitan planning organization for all of Metro Atlanta, the 5th District is at the heart of a lot of the great work we've been doing with our partner local governments like the City of Atlanta, like MARTA, to help make our communities more livable. And for us, Doug already talked about it. It's helping to make sure that transportation infrastructure creates places where we know people will have the opportunity to use the car less, use transit more, which is a critical part. So when you're looking at the MARTA stations now, we know these plus ups and these in the bill, you know, more than 30% more for transit, more than 20% more for the type of classic transportation infrastructure we're talking about here, means that we're going to be doing more in the 5th District and more across the region to help marry this idea of creating great places through transportation infrastructure like better trails, improved pedestrian access to near and around MARTA, which we've been funding for years. If you're at the Edgewood MARTA station or at the Avondale MARTA station, you'll feel that we've been building housing close to those stations. And the ARC has helped through its discretionary funding that we leverage through the MPO to help MARTA and the City of Atlanta put that housing at the MARTA station and improve those MARTA stations that people, if they choose, don't actually have to use the car, which is a big thing for us to recognize. And what we've already talked about, right? The more time you spend in the car, The less time you spend with your family, the less time you are spending doing the work you need to do to have a successful life. So again, this funding creates stability for us in those programs. I couldn't be more excited about that.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is exactly what we sought out with this legislation, to create equity in our communities so that people can live, work, and play right in their neighborhoods, get to where they need to go. I know that the one thing that I hear from other members across the country, they're like, we come to Atlanta, but that traffic. So y'all, we are doing something about that traffic because it affects our everyday way of life. So I'm excited to continue this conversation this morning and bring in some questions that we've received in advance. The first question is, I guess, for both of you. How would investments from President Biden's newly passed infrastructure plan help the ARC meet its long-term regional plans?
Well, for sure, it will give us more planning funding as well as more funding for capital expansion in transit services, and also to repair, maintain, and expand our roads and highways appropriately. Certainly, part of our work is to develop a 30-year long-range plan of investment of federal and state and local dollars. And with the federal partners coming with increased support, we'll be able to accelerate some of those plans. Some key projects such as premium transit for Clayton County residents, expanding the streetcar in Atlanta, and also to provide greater transit services in critical corridors like Greenbrier Parkway, Campbellton Road, and things of that nature. Places of that nature are critical for us to improve the mobility experience for Atlantans and residents in the 5th Congressional District. So this is just extremely wonderful and a great boost for us. Mike, you might want to add some other things there. You're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. I'm mute fouling this morning. One of the things that I always try to remember is that transit does cost real money. And the city of Atlanta has already voted and approved the More MARTA program, right? Self-taxing the city's residents, self-taxing themselves to generate this additional revenue. But even with that additional funding, they can't do it on their own. Those projects that Doug was just talking about need that additional federal investment. So when you really get into the bill and you start talking about capital improvement grants for transit, that money is money that we desperately need. And having more of that money means that when the More MARTA program is really starting to get built, we're talking about all the things, right? Especially along the Beltline in the 5th District, we need that money from the federal government to make it work. There just isn't enough local revenue to do that. So having this money, having this bill means that MARTA is going to have the opportunity to really do things quicker than they would have done them on their own. And that's critical for everyone to remember. So this is exciting, right? And so these additional transit facilities that we're going to build, like Hamilton Road, that extend out past the 5th District, all are going to serve this economic ecosystem within the 5th District that includes downtown and midtown and all these core economic centers that want to make sure people can get to and from. Often, if they choose to use something other than a single occupancy vehicle car. So this additional funding is just such a great thing for us to have right now. It couldn't be better time given that we're making investments in ourselves in the 5th District, the city, and the region.
And one more thing I would add to that too, Congresswoman, it would allow us to address issues of safety, particularly pedestrian safety, and do better street design and development for critical corridors like Joseph E. Boone, where we've unfortunately seen some pedestrians struck by vehicles in the past. And so we'll be able to address pedestrian and bicycle safety, which are critically important as we continue to think about our investment in transportation. If it's not safe, then it's not useful. So this will enable us to really improve safety as well as enhance our capacity.
So I was actually going to touch on that, and you read my mind, Mr. Hooker, around the safety issues that are connected to this and how these investments also help our people on a day-to-day basis. So I did an infrastructure tour in every city in the district, and I had each local leaders to take me around to show me the bridges and the roads in need of repair. And one of the things that I didn't anticipate is on my infrastructure tour with Commissioner Rowan in the city of Atlanta is the safety aspect of this. And we're going down MLK and looking at the new medians that have been put up to make it more pedestrian friendly and to slow down the traffic. So, and we actually went over to Joseph E. Boone to talk about what we could do to slow down the traffic there and how we could make it more pedestrian friendly. So I'm excited to hear that people who have not quite connected this infrastructure bill to their everyday life can hear how this is also going to impact them, slowing down traffic on some of these roads that have been dangerous. And we've unfortunately lost people's lives, and also making it more pedestrian friendly so we can get out of our cars and enjoy some of the art that is coming up around the city and getting some cars off of the streets as well. So one thing that in talking about roads and bridges, how does investing now in repair and maintenance of our roads and bridges help set us up for greater success in the long run?
Mike, I'll let you take that first.
Yeah, what we've known for a long time is when you're thinking out many, many years, right? Money costs more in the future. Things cost more in the future, right? Concrete, steel, land. So we've been committed as a region, as a state, to really making sure we prioritize maintenance. And the sooner we do the maintenance on those critical facilities, the less they will actually cost us over the long run. And that's the important thing for everyone to remember. It's always a challenge to find the right balance between maintenance and expanding the network, capital expenditures for new roads or widening roads or other new facilities. But making sure, especially our bridges, are repaired soon saves us all a lot of money over the long run. And that's a great thing. So more money for bridges, big plus ups in this bill for that, because those are often so expensive and so problematic. As Mr. Hooker knows, when he was working at the city, it's so hard to take a bridge down and manage the traffic. But we can do these sooner, better. There's less pain for everyone over the long run. And again, our children will pay less in the future if we can continue to maintain these facilities.
When bridges go down, certainly safety is at risk. And we unfortunately saw that very recently here in the Atlanta region, where we had a bridge on the east side of the metro area collapse and unfortunately killed 2 workers that were working on that bridge. And we don't want our bridges to get to that point. And anytime we have to downgrade a bridge so that heavier vehicles like school buses or delivery vans can't go over it safely, then what we've done is cut off people's mobility. We've made it more inconvenient. We've made our traffic patterns a lot worse for air quality and things of that nature. So investing in maintaining roads like Marietta Boulevard, which is in need of a major makeover, repairing and replacing significant bridges like the Central Avenue Bridge downtown, which is an extremely important corridor that if it goes down, we will be cutting off Georgia State and Georgia State students from the downtown area. So it's things like that this money will help us to accelerate and get on top of before we get to the pattern of them being so degraded that they're unsafe or less useful.
So we know that investing in roads and bridges is good, but I think a lot of people still miss the point on other connections to the day-to-day impact other than just those safety issues, which are critical. The safety issues are critical because we all want to get to where we're going safely. But I think one of the things that people don't make the connection between is when we talk about things like the supply chain challenges right now and what is happening in our country and how backed up things are. And some people think, well, it doesn't affect me. And this infrastructure bill, why are we still talking about it and making a big deal of it? And Mr. Hooker, Mr. Alexander, I think about things. I aim to just demystify Congress in my work and bring the people into the fold. And so last week, I had a committee hearing in transportation and infrastructure about the supply chain challenges and what that meant for people. And I asked people on my personal Facebook page to tell me how the supply chain issue had impacted them. Initially, people didn't quite make the connection until I told the story about one night, my son and I and my husband, we got in the car and I wanted to go to Taco Bell, Mr. Hooker. And I ordered my meal, and y'all told me they were out of mouth sauce. They had a sign on the board that said, due to supply chain issues, we can't get some of our products. And so that is a direct impact of infrastructure and supply chain impacting my everyday life. My Carter Cakes is making his Christmas list because he said, Mommy, I've been a good boy, and he wants all of these things for Christmas. And y'all, I don't know if Santa's going to be able to get some of these things because of supply chain challenges. So I just want to talk more about some of like how that is a part of infrastructure and the impact that it's having on the metro region.
Absolutely. When infrastructure is not up to par, and our critical deliveries from the port, from the airports can't be made in a timely fashion. Not only is it inconvenient, it costs us more money, which is certainly not helpful for any of us. And also, too, there are critical life-saving things that are put at risk. Recently, my wife went to our local pharmacy to get a resupply on one of her prescriptions, and they didn't have it. They couldn't have it because of supply chain. It couldn't be delivered in a timely manner for her to get that. And we had to actually go to a different pharmacy well across the region in order to get what was a critical prescription for her. So the supply chain and infrastructure are intimately interwoven and tied up. And it's not just a matter of, well, it's a matter of safety. It's a matter of health. It's a matter of convenience, and it's a matter of price. As we said, it costs us more when the infrastructure doesn't work or doesn't work well. So this bill will certainly help us to smooth out a lot of those wrinkles for sure.
I can't thank you again enough for this bill, because I know not just in your district, but down in Savannah, this money will help support the port. And if you haven't ever toured the port, it is absolutely something to see. The scale of it is absolutely amazing. But they're expanding the rail lines down there. They're almost finished with another expansion, and they've used federal resources for that, which is going to mean they're going to take more of those trucks off the road and use rail to move these goods long distances. In fact, with plans to move it straight through Atlanta, in some cases, very, very long trains. And while we're hearing those train sounds in Metro Atlanta, know that the efficiencies that the federal government has helped create in places like Savannah means our system will be more efficient in Metro Atlanta. So you really have to think about this as a global system and not forget that everyone's being impacted right now. But we're making good decisions with this bill to help improve the network, to make it more efficient so that, all these Christmas goods will be there in time. Is always our hope, but over the long term, it'll make us a lot more efficient. And I want our small businesses in Metro Atlanta to not have to wait on things to get them on the shelves, to make those sales they need to keep their businesses strong. So again, this bill is putting big money into those types of facilities, which often don't get talked about in this national conversation.
We can certainly tell your son that even Santa needs good infrastructure.
Even Santa needs good infrastructure. Yeah, and that's why I'm excited that $8 million immediately went to the Port of Savannah in this bill. The day that the bill was signed, $8 million was released to ease the tension and the backlog at the Port of Savannah. So we should be feeling the impact of that very soon. But in addition to that $8 million, $17 billion overall in this bill will go to improving our coastal ports, inland ports, and waterways. And as we've discussed, y'all, this isn't just about roads and bridges. This is about making sure that families can get what they need when looking for a new car, so that we can get those car products in our ports, so that we can make sure that constituents that I've talked to who are running small businesses, who have done an increase in paper and to-go orders because of the pandemic, can get the paper goods that they need, so that Santa can deliver for children across the country and Miss Patrice can get her prescription in a timely manner. So this is about every different aspect of our community and our district, and we need to make sure that we are continuing to do this work. And that's why I'm proud to have been a part of getting the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. And now I want to talk more about just what this, like the rail lines and what this means for electrification. We touched on it a little bit, but I heard a story of someone who told me they had an electric car. She lives in Buckhead right now, right by Phipps Plaza. And she said, Nikema, I can't drive from Atlanta to Savannah on a trip because there's not enough places for me to recharge along the way. And so I think about the electrification pieces in this bill, and not only what it will mean for you to take that leisurely trip from Atlanta to Savannah and be able to recharge and not be stranded on I-16 somewhere, because we all know there's not a lot there right now on I-16, but what that means for our environment and just our entire way of living in Metro Atlanta. So I'd love to just touch on that just a little bit more, Mr. Alexander.
Yeah. So, for me, and I'm going to shift gears for just a second, it's about air quality, right? And mobile source pollution from the tailpipe. We've improved dramatically, but there's still a disproportionate number of children in Metro Atlanta, especially in environmental justice areas, that are suffering from asthma, right? And as we move the fleet from combustion engine to electric, I know we're going to get a big environmental benefit to that. That's going to help those children and help people literally breathe easier. So for me as a regional planner, working on air quality is something we do every day. It's mandated through these federal bills. So now we know the challenge is getting the core infrastructure to make those charging stations accessible so that people feel good about making a decision to buy an electric vehicle. With that back benefit of just helping people to breathe better is always in our minds. So this bill is a first in the sense that it's going to be providing funding for that type of infrastructure, which we weren't thinking about 20 years ago, but now it's here and we've had to adapt. And this bill, I think, really starts us off in the best foot forward to putting those facilities in place.
Absolutely.
I think it also helps us address the nation's climate goals as spoken by President Biden during the recent climate conference, UN-sponsored climate conference. And we certainly need to be a lot more aggressive in that regard. And as Mike said, having public charging stations that allow for convenient, safe, and reliable recharging of vehicles for long-distance trips will really help us accelerate our adoption of electric vehicles in the U.S. fleet and help us to be more aggressive in combating climate change.
Absolutely. Electrification cannot just be a luxury if we're really going to address the climate issue in this country, in this world. So thank you guys so much for being here with this morning. We are at the 10 o'clock hour, and this is just the first of many conversations because, y'all, we got a lot to talk about when we talk about the historic investments in infrastructure that this bill will bring to our country. So there is more to come. We are out of time, and I want to thank Mr. Hooker, Mr. Doug Hooker, and Mr. Michael Alexander for hopping on this quick Facebook Live this morning to talk about all things infrastructure and what the historic investments of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act mean for you as citizens of this region of the 5th Congressional District. Remember that this is a $13.6 billion investment in Georgia alone for equitable transit, clean water, quality, accessible internet access, and safer highways. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. A lot happens in Washington, but it's all for you. One of my goals is to always make it plain and demystify Congress. So if there is anything that you want to know more about, please contact my office. You can visit us online at nikemawilliams.house.gov. That's NIKEMAWILLIAMS.house.gov. Give us a call and tell us what you want to know more about. I'm here to represent you. You can also contact my Atlanta office at 404-659-0116 or my DC office at 202-225-3801. Thanks again for hanging out with us this morning and have a great week.